welcome everybody, and thank you for coming, and thanks to Anusha and the entire team at Career Services here. I see our Dean of Career Services, Julie Hartenstein, is here. I see Elena Cabral is here. Jacqueline is here from the team, and those of you from Columbia J School are so lucky that you have these 5 folks who are dedicated to helping you get jobs and internships, and they do a fantastic job doing that. And I talk to people at other universities, and they're amazed that a school of our size is able to provide the kind of leadership and assistance that they do. Also, they just ran our Career Expo, which many of you attended, the largest journalism-only job fair in the country, and 130-something companies came to recruit. And watching all of this over the years has shown me that there's a lot happening in the journalism world, the journalism jobs world, and a lot of it is changing. And what I hope to share with you today are some of those changes and how we want to think about how we connect and share ideas with the world. I hope you'll be using Twitter today, and we'll be tweeting what we're doing here. And if you'll use the 3 tips hashtag, that'd be great. And today's slides are all available already at bit.ly/3jobs. So if you want to tweet that out, you can. And those of you who've been in any of my social classes know that I like to start each class by sending out a tweet in front of you. And there's only a few things more boring than watching somebody else tweet. I know paint drying might be one of them, grass growing, but we're going to watch this together. It's also very infuriating because you know you can do a better job than I can, and now you're going to watch me do this. So talking about social media, things you need to know before you graduate. Watch for the tips from a great looking audience. All right. And then here, follow via #3tips. All right, now that's too long, so I have to adjust that. So I can make this just like something like this. It can go in here and adjust that. Oh, sorry. This is not my laptop, so I'm getting used to it. Okay, so watch for tips. I don't need the here, right? So I can edit this. Sometimes my kids watch me do this, and we work on their writing by having them help me. They'll keep saying, drop this, drop that. So anyway, so does that look okay? Roughly okay? Part of the reason I make you watch this painful thing is because tweeting is a painful process for me. I spend between 3 and 6 minutes on every tweet I write. And the reason I do that is because this is the most important, this tweet might be, or this thing that I do might be the most important thing or the most widely read thing I do today. Not today because I was on TV this morning, but on any given day. Also, the reason I take it so seriously is because I tell people social media is the only thing I do every day that can get me fired today. Facebook is the only thing I do every day that can get me divorced today. And Twitter is the only thing I do ever that will be in the Library of Congress. Right? You all know this, right? Every tweet is in the Library of Congress. I don't believe they've been affected by sequestration, but they might be. And if that's true, then maybe you want to go out and write whatever you want, but you don't know if they are in fact keeping track of it. So is this ready to go? So I take a deep breath, I cross a lot of fingers, and then I'm ready to send this. Is that okay, everybody? Yes? Okay, okay, and hit go. And there it's gone. And I'm only slightly exaggerating. There's a whole video online of me tweeting, and you watch me actually compose the entire tweet, and you see how much work that is. We've been teaching social media here at the J School now for 5, 6 years, I think 6 years, and I said to my students the first day, if your parents knew that you're paying Columbia tuition for a class in Facebook and Twitter, they'd call my boss, Nick Lemon, and get me fired. And the way that I think about it is that we have to use social media in a more strategic manner to help us in so many aspects of our lives, but none perhaps more important than the most important story we'll ever do, that is our own story. And having done a lot of hiring, a lot of firing, a lot of managing, those ideas that I have built over the years are reflected somewhat in this talk. And I also have a lot of ideas from, obviously, great people I have worked with over the years. One of the things I tell my students to do is this here. I say, always remember ABC, SAP. ABC is always be collecting. And what I mean by that is everybody now should pull out a phone that they have, or an iPad, or Android, or iPhone, whatever you have, pull it out. And use it as a collection device. Collect things around you. When you see something, just take a picture of it. You don't have to share it. In fact, that's what the SAP is about. Share as appropriate. Always be collecting. Share as appropriate. And there you see Jen pulls out her phone. She's taking a picture, right? If you see a slide that's interesting, just grab a picture of it. And in my class, I know you can't do this in others, but get up and walk around. If you want to come right up and take a picture, that's great. Or you want to come around and take a picture over my shoulder of the audience, that's also fine. If you're wondering what is going on here with a camera crew following somebody else, not me, what's happening with that, all of that's fine. I want this class to be a room where you're participating, you're sharing ideas, and you're able to kind of think about ways in which the new way we communicate, that you can learn the new ways we communicate and share ideas. So pull out your phones and be taking pictures and be sharing pictures as appropriate. One other thing I'm going to do is to log into my Facebook. And on Facebook, one thing that I find I'm surprised many people still don't do this is that they type in their email address every time they log into Facebook. Who does that? A few of you, right? Why should you not do that? Because you're wasting characters, right? You don't need to do that. You have, instead of using your email, you have the ability to use the username, right? So that's what you should be using. So my username is Srinet, and you'll save X number of characters. Let's say 10 characters a day. 10 characters a day times 3 times a day times 365 days a year. That's a novel, right? So save those characters, save your fingers, and log in using your Twitter, your Facebook username. And they're constantly trying to do things with fixing the way you're able to connect and get the security part of Facebook figured out. One of the things I'm going to talk about today is all the new changes in Facebook. There's so many things that have changed and are changing even while we speak. I had some students who took this class, a version of my 4-week class, 5-week class just a few days ago, and they were talking about how quickly things have changed from just there. So here's somebody asking, someone please take notes from Sri's class. So we're going to help him, and what we're going to do is we're going to go onto my Facebook profile, and I'm just going to click in there. 1 second. And I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to open a thread. And those of you who have a computer, pull out the computer and start sharing notes in it. And do this as a gift to Turner, who asked, but also anybody else who wants it. She was asking what that other big number was. This is the number you see here on the right. This is the followed by number. And it was a little scary to hear you count all of those numbers. That was quite unusual for someone to do that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to say here, talking about, here's what I can do. I can actually go in and copy that other tweet so that you don't have to watch me type that all over again. Here I go. I'm just going to pull this from here. So 4 of you have hit retweet. That's good. If more of you want to do that, you can. Again, I apologize that this I'm having trouble with the keyboard here. Okay, trouble with keyboards. Actually not having trouble. I just make you feel at home with this. Talking about social media things you need to know before you graduate. Watch for notes from the audience, and please add your own. Please add your own. One of the things you've noticed a change in Facebook is this smiley face. You've all seen this? Where you can kind of talk about how you're feeling, right? Does everybody seen that? And we'll talk a little bit more about what it means. So what can I say here? So I could say feeling social media-ized. It's kind of fun to make your own thing, make this up as you go along. And then I'll do this. So how will anybody here have them? And then you can pick one of these. How about that? Or let's do that, okay? And then post. And it's public, so if anybody wants to go to facebook.com/3net and just type in some comments or in helping people, please do that. And people can go in here and post it. Okay? So let's go back to the talk. And so I have these slides, but the slides are just a way to help you think about what we are going to be talking about here today. Again, my email address is sri@sri.net. If you have questions, please feel free to ask. I should have put it on here, but I've not done that. Now, you notice that I call these slides, I call them Beyond Job Hunting. And the reason I do that is because I want you to think beyond job hunting. Instead, we want you to think about kind of career management. And the reason I don't like job hunting as an idea is that it's an emergency mode operation. And it's always kind of desperate when you're trying to do that. But if you think career management, then you can do a lot of things because you're thinking long term, you're thinking strategy. And we're going to talk about the need for a board of advisors. We're going to talk about how you activate your network. And then this idea I have that I never turn down a job I haven't been offered. Does everybody understand what that means? If not, just think about that for a minute. I've never turned down a job I haven't been offered. But I find hundreds of students that I've worked with turn down jobs they haven't been offered, and they miss a lot of opportunities. And the final thing there I've put on the screen is you never know. So I want to start by showing you this picture. You never know, it says, West 109th Street, fall of 1981. Actually, I took this picture a few weeks ago, but think back to the fall of '81. Some of you were not born in the fall of '81, which is very scary. But a young man comes to Columbia and is so excited to come to Columbia, he sends a note to his roommate that he's moving to Columbia, comes to New York, goes knocks on this roommate's door, no answer. Keeps knocking, no answer. He has the suitcase with him and he keeps knocking. Finally, it's evening, he has to spend the night. There's no email, there's no telephone, any of those things, right? So he goes into the alley and gets on and then spends the night in the alley sleeping on top of his suitcase. 28 years later, that man is the President of the United States. That's the story of Barack Obama. And I want you to think back to 1981, and you live in that building, and you see a young black man pounding on the door. How would you react? You see a young black man sleeping in the alley on a suitcase. How would you react? What would you think of him? What would you think of what kind of man he is, what his life story is, and where that story goes? Most of us, including me, would not ever imagine that that man is one day going to be President of the United States. And why I show this in the conversation about careers is that I want you to think about that as this idea that you never know what's going to happen, what opportunities you're going to have in your life, and what's going to walk up to you, what's going to show up in your email inbox, what's going to happen in a tweet. And the amazing thing is that real good opportunities never announce themselves. They never say, this is the greatest thing ever. Because all the things in your inbox that say greatest thing ever are usually the worst thing ever, right? They want to increase your body parts and reduce your mortgage, right? Things like that. But this idea that you never know, I want you to take with you as you graduate, as you go out there, that you never know what you're going to encounter, who you're going to encounter, and what's going to happen. At the job fair that we've had here now 15 years or more, we tell our students, go to every interview you can. And I see students who leave with the 5 interviews they got, like 5 minimum interviews. And then I see students who get 22 interviews. Right? What kind of person are you going to be? Are you going to be the person who does the minimum and gets the 5 interviews? Or the person who goes to 22? 22 is probably too much. And Julie will say, probably don't do 22. But somewhere in the answer, I don't think the answer is 5. I think the answer is somewhere closer to 22 than to 5. And something to think about. One of the ideas I have is to always trust the network. And the reason you came to Columbia, the reason you came to higher ed, you came and studied, you got a great education, was obviously to get the education, but part of it was to get the network. And you must use the network as much as you can. And the network isn't just the Columbia network or whatever other schools you've been to, but it is also the digital network, and we'll talk about that. One of the ideas I have is that the future of the world is really connecting the physical and the digital, and we want to do more of that, and we'll talk about that as we go along. This is my LinkedIn network from about 4 or 5 years ago. And you can see how that works. I had about 2,400 connections, and those 2,400 connections had 11 million connections, which is kind of interesting to think about, right? And we'll see 34,000 people came into my network in a few days that I looked at this slide back then. The other thing to think about as you looked at LinkedIn, and we'll talk more about LinkedIn, is that LinkedIn is greatly underappreciated. And LinkedIn has undergone a lot of changes just in the last few days, and I'm going to highlight those as we go along as well. At any point, if you have a question, please raise your hand, please ask. Happy to answer anything you like. Well, let's think about the changing jobs environment. Fortune cover story on LinkedIn a couple of years ago talked about the head of Accenture Global Recruiting plans to do 40% of his hiring or her hiring through social media. That's a pretty high percent, but that's a couple of years ago. I bet that number is undercounted. Microsoft research, 79% of hiring managers review online info about recruits. Again, I think that's an undercount. And 70% have rejected applicants based on what they found online. I bet you that number is 80%, 90%, because everybody now looks online. One of the things that I urge you all to think about is your resume and creating the best resume you can. But that print resume of yours is important, but it will be seen 10,000 times less than your LinkedIn resume. How much time are you spending on your LinkedIn resume? And it may not even be 10,000, it might be 100,000 times more people will see your LinkedIn resume over the course of your career than they will your print resume. Think about those numbers and think about how much time you spend on that. One of the other ideas I have is to be findable. What that means is too many journalists and media folks spend their time hiding as if that's the right approach to life. I tell you to be findable. Does anybody know who this is? Who is this? Bob Woodward. Not just Bob Woodward, the Bob Woodward, right? And that is, in fact, his home number and a map to his house. And why is he listed in the phone book? Why is he still listed in the phone book? Because he wants the next deep throat to call him and not some young whippersnapper at Politico or BuzzFeed, right? He wants them to call him. So not Mike Allen, not Rachel Maddow, not BuzzFeed's Ben Smith. By the way, another idea I have for all of you is to do what I call a name check. Practice your social media all the time. And one of the ways to do that is when I mention people, to tweet at them in this class. And get into the habit of doing that, that whenever you see someone mention someone in public, give them a little internet chit, and I'll talk more about that, but one of them is this name check. So right now, if you tweeted at Mike Allen and said, first double check his Twitter handle, I think it's Mike Allen, and just say, hey, at Mike Allen, we're talking about you at Columbia Journalism, or at BuzzFeed Ben, we're talking at you at Columbia J School in Sri's class. What happens is Ben, who I presume is downtown somewhere doing his thing, suddenly is grabbed and brought and deposited in the Joseph Pulitzer World Room at Columbia J School, right? And that gives you a connection, a tiny connection with him. One of my rules is that social media allows you to think about things we've never thought about. That your opportunity, if you ever wanted to work for Ben, this is the guy who was profiled very nicely on the cover of the style section of the New York Times, on a Sunday style section, that if you wanted to work with him in the old days, the only way he'd know anything about you is when you applied to him for a job. Today, you can build connections with him and hundreds of other people when you don't need them, right? So look at what she's doing, exactly what is the right thing. Get up, take pictures, think about how you can tell stories. Again, I don't want you to get in trouble in other classes by doing this, but in my class, use your social media and use your feet to capture stuff. So what I mean by this is, think about Mike Allen or think about Rachel Maddow. You want her to come and speak to us at the J School for something in a few weeks, something like that, right? So the first time she'll hear from you is the letter she gets. But what if she got from you, she notices in her Twitter stream 3 mentions from Columbia J School or from you, right? Think about that. So I tell people, don't let the first time someone hears from you be an ask. I tell people, don't be an ask on social media. And the way to think about this is also how you build relationships. There's a whole new way of building relationships that I'm going to talk about. Some of you are going to find this so ridiculous when you hear it. But this is the way people are now interacting with folks. I can tell you that unless I absolutely have to, I never cold call anybody. Anybody. Even when I'm on assignment for the New York Times, I don't cold call somebody. Why? Because you never know when you're getting somebody on the phone, right? Even though I'm calling from Columbia, from the provost's office, I try not calling anybody, cold calling people on the phone. I email them first and say, please let me know when you're free, and you try this. Now, you can't do this all the time. You're on a breaking news story. Of course you cold call. But the percentage chances of your getting through to people, getting them at the right time rather than when they're really busy, is when you don't think about cold calling. So these are my ideas. Doesn't mean everybody should do them, but these are the way that I'm thinking about connections, and we'll talk more about this. By the way, some of you might say, gee, why did you black out the number if it's public? Well, I didn't want you prank calling him on my account. So if you want to go look him up and prank call him, you can, but I prefer you didn't do it because of me. Any questions so far from anybody? Right? I know not everybody here is going to go into reporting because we have some guests from other schools and things here, but almost everything I'm talking about applies in almost any field of human interest as you're trying to connect and find people. This idea of be findable, participate in the life around you. Here is a freelance piece I wrote for Forbes that came out because of a Facebook status update. What happened was, it was the 5th anniversary of Facebook, and I posted on Facebook, hey, I can't believe it's 5 years, and look how the world has changed because of Gmail. And I wrote that in the morning around 8 o'clock or so. By 2:30 p.m., I had this byline in Forbes. How? Not because I'm so great, because the editor was listening, right? The editors, and lots of editors now do this, they are on social media to listen, to hear ideas, to hear about what's possible, what are new trends, new ideas. And I don't know if you remember this ridiculous one-way fight that Michael Wolff decided to have with Steve Call, our new dean, our incoming dean, because he's not on Twitter. Well, first of all, Steve Call is on Twitter, but he wasn't tweeting. He was listening on Twitter. By the way, his name is pronounced Call, rhymes with doll. People should know that. It's like people who worked at Columbia all these years didn't know it was in fact Lemon and not Lehman. So that's my little contribution. But he's Steve Call NY, by the way, if you want to follow him. His Twitter handle is @SteveCall, COLL, NY. Again, you don't need him for anything. This is the time to reach out to him and say, Sri said something about you or something. Whatever you want to say, I don't care. But put that in there and put the 3 tips so I can go back and look. The importance of the hashtag is that it's a digital fence around this conversation. I call it the ability for you to talk about me behind my back to my face so that I can go back and look at it. So here, and I'll tell you the editor who did this so you can give him a shout out as well. His Twitter handle is Tunku V. And he's a terrific editor. He used to run Newsweek and all kinds of other things. So tweet at him. And I can't believe this was now, we're already at the 9th anniversary of Gmail, right? And that's how fast kind of things move and change, as you can see here. Any questions so far? So participate. If you have an idea, post it. That's why I say collect stuff when you don't need it so that you can then build it. Here is another example. A student of mine participating in my Facebook comments. So that's why I'm asking you to go in here and post things in the Facebook comments here. Let's see, has anybody done that? Nobody, right? Not one person's posted anything yet. Maybe you will in a few minutes. But what happened was this guy, Hunter, Hunter Walker tweeted, someone can find him and tweet at him. Someone tell me what his Twitter handle is if you can look him up. And he posted something on one of my status updates. And that same editor, Tunku, saw that and commissioned a piece from him. Right? So one of the reasons why I'm telling you to go into my Facebook and participate in there is because a lot of editors see that stuff. Right? And so if you wrote the best notes from today and posted them either on Twitter or on this, I will amplify it for you, and I will get attention to you and what you're doing. And this was the same thing where he posted something, Tunku wrote to him, and he had a byline in the magazine, in the website. So participate in things around you. Collect, participate, share as appropriate. The changing job environment is so important for us to understand. Let's take a look at this. What can happen in 4 short years? Hi, Sri, how are you? We spoke a few years ago, thanks to my cousin. At the time, I was a photographer turned writer, getting a hold on the industry. Now I'm managing editor of, by the way, it's a magazine, it's a New York City publication you all know. 4 years, right? I'm in the process of hiring beat interns for the spring semester. I was hoping, What is the lesson from this? That you have to help people when you think they can't be helpful to you. You cannot go through life calculating every time you help somebody, what am I going to get in return? What I have learned is everything you do, if you do it from a point of generosity and a spirit of helpfulness, it will come back to you in so many more ways. And I learned that the hard way. I learned that from doing these classes long before this. I used to do classes on how to use Google, if you can believe it. I used to do a 3.5-hour session called Things You Didn't Know Google Does. I used to do this thing about the internet and how to use the web. I used to do this thing about how to use email. And in all of those things, in one of those, I used to do these, I had these, like the best websites to know. And I would, in the web version that I would give out to everybody, a printed version with the URLs, but on the online version, I wouldn't put any of the links. And what I realized is that I was harming myself in the process. Instead, once I opened up the list and published it entirely online and made it free to the world, then that's when TV people started calling me, people started hiring me to do stuff, my consulting went up, all because they said, gee, if this is the free version, imagine what we can do for the Sri version, right? Well, imagine if we paid what we could get. So I urge you to think not like, I'm glad I helped this person because now she's a big shot in 4 years. Right? But I meet too many students and too many people who are always like, you can see their head gear turning, like when inside the gear inside their head. Like, what is the calculation? What is this person going to do for me? You never know. Think back to that photograph I showed you of the alley. Here's the changing jobs environment. Hi, Sri. There's a note from a different managing editor. I hope all is well. I wanted to check in to see if you're familiar with X, a magazine concentrator. I'm considering her for assistant editor position. This happens on a daily, weekly basis at Columbia, where folks who are not listed as references get asked about people. And most of us spend all this time curating those 3 references, and I can tell you they mean almost nothing. They don't not mean nothing. They don't not mean nothing. They mean something. They are important. You should have 3 great references, obviously. But this is what people do. And when you've been at Columbia 21 years, people will contact me and others and say, what do you know about this person? And that results in us kind of panicking and trying to find some information about these people. So think about this, that the main 3 references aren't what you're building. You're building to have all your references, everybody who touches you, to be a potential reference for you. And this is very important. Now, somebody from Career Services can tell me whether this is like against HR rules to not check with the exact references listed on there, but this is what happens. And I don't know if anybody wants to add, amplify, or jump into any of this, but this is something to think about. Anusha. By the way, she's Anusha CU, at Anusha, the letter C, letter U. She used to be at Anusha Dow Jones, and she had to change her Twitter handle because she changed jobs. So
even if we are not asked about a specific person, we may be asked, I'm looking to fill X
Yep.
position.
That's the other side of this.
Suggest a couple of
Right.
So
So does everybody hear that? That they will, not just this happens, but this person could write to us and say, we're looking for somebody. In fact, one of the things that's a little difficult for us in career services is many people want our recommendations, don't want to post widely because they don't want to get 300 resumes. They want Julie's hand-picked 3 best people. And Julie and Anusha and Gina and others can't do that all day, right? We would rather just publish the job posting and then we can give you feedback. But they constantly want a list of the 3 people who are good. And so that's something to think about as well. Any questions? Please jump in. These are all real emails. And this is how fast things move, folks, in the jobs world. Hope all is going well. Wanted to drop you a line about one of the students we met at the career fair. I wrote back something. 24 hours later, we're going to send him an offer shortly, right? That's how fast this stuff happens, folks. So you've got to think about, are you accessible all the time? We talked about Bob Woodward being findable. Are you findable? Does the Career Services Office know where you are? Do you update the Career Services Office, right? I know from our own alumni, some of them who have a good job now, and they decide, oh, I don't need to tell Columbia anything. That's not true. You never know when Columbia can help you, when you can help Columbia. So please be in touch. Stay in touch with the alumni office. Stay in touch with the office here as well. The other reason I like showing the Bob Woodward thing is I always say, are you busier than Bob Woodward? Are you more important than Bob Woodward? But with a caveat, you have to be careful about how you're found. I'm not saying list your home phone number, right? And especially women have to be careful about all kinds of guys out there who might be troubling you. So have a strategy around this about how much you will be found. I have a friend who is a big-time TV journalist, but she will never be stalked by someone finding out where she lives because she uses her maiden name on the air, but all her other documents are her, her married name. And anybody stalking her would be lost trying to find this person, right? He'll only be able to find her on the air, not in, he could go to the exit and stand there and things like that. But just think about, what is your strategy? And she decided that when she was 22, that one day when she gets married, she's going to switch just to have to deal with it in that sense. Questions from anybody? Okay. I tell people all the time that when the plane lands in the Hudson, it's too late to figure out Twitter. And what I mean by that is you should know how to use these tools when you don't need them, right? That's why I urge you to pull out your camera, take pictures of today. Take a picture of this lady taking pictures, like it's kind of funny, right? Take a picture of her. You don't have to do anything with it because all of us will have some world exclusive thing happen in front of us. It may not be this dramatic, right? But something will happen to you. Will you know how to capture it? And then will you know how to accelerate it and get it out there? That's kind of the main thing that I want you to think about. So if you don't practice, and by the way, for all my bluster about this, the other day I was at the UN and the Korean delegation was in town and the Secretary General was walking by and I'm like futzing for my phone, right? I could have had a quick picture, taken a picture with the SG or of the SG, and I couldn't have it. So now I want to carry this glued to my chest here so I can take a picture. But you never know what's going to happen in front of you, and that's not that exciting. But practice now. See how you can get pictures. So you all know the story of Jay Crooms, at Jay Crooms. Giannis is his name. You want to tweet at him. This is again practicing. Giannis is never going to be of help to you, perhaps, but turns out he's now an entrepreneur and does a lot of judging and speaking of startups. Maybe you want to follow him. But anyway, so Giannis was on a ferry trying to get to New Jersey when this thing happened, and he tweeted, "There's a plane in the Hudson. I'm on the ferry going to pick up the people." Crazy, right? And if you look at the picture, by the way, I think it's like a beautiful painting when you look at it. It's called A Miracle on the Hudson. You'll see these smudges. Anybody know what the smudges are? He actually shot it through the window, the dirty window of the ferry, because this was January. Remember, this was that cold, and he was doing that. And his iPhone 3, I think, was dying, and he finally just kind of made it onto shore, and he got a call he got a call from somebody, and he answered it, and he said, "Hi, I'm calling from MSNBC. We're going to put you on the air in 20 seconds. Are you available?" And he said, "Okay, my phone's about to die." And suddenly he was on the air live to the world, right? Describing this. So you'll say, well, this is great for Giannis, but that's a story not about Giannis. It's a story about the guy who made the call. How did he find him so quickly? Right? Everybody thinks social media is a broadcasting device. It's a listening channel also. And so he was able to find him, put him on the air, and then for 72 hours, Giannis didn't sleep. He was on all the TV networks all over the world doing this stuff. So that guy who called, who was a producer, I believe it was an AP at the time at MSNBC, now runs social and digital for all of NBC News. And he did that pretty fast. And his name is @Rozzy, R-O-Z-Z-Y. And you want to follow him and tweet him now and say, hey, we're talking about your amazing Twitter prowess here, right? We find that the people who show these skills and the ability to handle this stuff do very well in their jobs. And I have this article, What We Learned That Day. And you can go to the slides and click on that story to get the story, so you can read the whole thing if you want. Similarly, when your company starts having layoffs, it's too late to figure out LinkedIn. LinkedIn is greatly underappreciated. LinkedIn only has 4% of the global white-collar workforce. That means that tremendous upside is about to happen, right? They have 200 million users, and it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. And people don't understand what LinkedIn can do for them. So I'm going to show you some of the new stuff on LinkedIn. How many of you are on LinkedIn? Raise your hands, please. How many of you know what you're doing on LinkedIn? See the hands start falling, or you start doing Indian dancing, right? You go like this, maybe, I don't know. So this is Teresa, so I'm going to actually log out. I think Teresa would be very grateful if I logged out of her, though I could post all kinds of things, but I will not do that. She's been kind enough to let me use her account. So I'm just going to sign in here. And I'm just going to go in and post this. What is the most common password in the world? Yeah, password. That's not my password. But one thing that I would say to people, you know that nowadays, I tell people, we're told that every time there's daylight savings changes, change your batteries or check the batteries on your smoke detector, right? This is like an Americana thing that everybody does. So my version of that is every time you hear a big company's been hacked, change your password. And sometimes that's all you'll do. Every day you'll be changing your password, but it's a good habit. Every time you hear like Burger King's been hacked, you go and change your password. So let me show you some new things inside LinkedIn. First thing you'll notice is I have the executive account. And the reason I have that, and almost everything I show you, you don't need the executive account. But if you're a journalist or a blogger, there's a group called LinkedIn for Journalists. And I urge everybody to join that, journalism students as well. Join that, and then once a month, they have a free 30-minute webinar. If you listen in to that webinar for 30 minutes, they give you 1 year of the upgraded LinkedIn for free. And it's just really good to be part of that LinkedIn group anyway. And if you're a filmmaker, there's LinkedIn for filmmakers, like all this stuff. But the journalism one is the one I'm talking about. Do join that, and you'll find that it's so underappreciated that what LinkedIn can do. So go in there and check that out right away. And they will give you that. But I tell people, I don't know why more people don't pay for LinkedIn. LinkedIn is going to be so important in your work. You want to get a job that pays 50, 60, 100, 200,000, $1 million, right? But LinkedIn costs something like $25, $30 a month. And you can upgrade and then downgrade. Use it for a couple of months and then you can downgrade. So I don't understand why people don't pay for the advanced version of LinkedIn, because it's a great way to connect and build your networks. Most of us spend more money on coffee than what this costs. So think about that, right? So I'm just going to go into my profile here, and I tell people, and you heard me say this already, that I want you to edit your digital self, edit your LinkedIn profiles. I tell people always showcase the best current you, the best current you. That means you're constantly editing your Twitter bio, you're editing your Facebook about section, and you're editing your LinkedIn. Now, constantly doesn't mean every day. It means on a regular basis, you're checking, does this show off the best current you? And when you look at this, this is one of the new irritating things on LinkedIn, right? As if the recommendation section wasn't confusing and irritating enough, they went and added this endorsements. You all know what I'm talking about, right? And so, like, all these people have endorsed me for all these things. Do I want to be known for press releases? Do I want to be known for content management? Maybe. I don't know. Proofreading. Maybe. I started life in journalism as a proofreader. But do I want that to be, just really, so I can add all these to profile, I can see my endorsements, etc. So first thing I want to tell you about is this summary. Who here has a really good summary in their LinkedIn? Nobody's hands are going up. One person. Everybody's hand should go up because you're going to go home today and you're going to do this. You're going to work on your LinkedIn summary. The best current you. And if you want to do it in third person, that's fine. But I did it this way. Okay, so everybody's going to do this. One of the things that our international students, we have students from 40 countries here, and the thing they cannot believe is when they come to career services and they're told to have a one-page resume. In places like India, 22-year-olds have 22-page resumes, like at what award they won in kindergarten, like best smile in kindergarten, right? Because in countries like India, your resume is weighed, right? They put it on a scale and say, okay, then you can get a job, right? I mean, that's almost like that, right? So here we teach them one-page resume. So what I'm talking about now is to keep that one-page beautiful print resume, but now think about your LinkedIn as something completely different, where the resume is just a teaser to this amazing living document that showcases the best possible current you. Everybody with me on this? Everybody understand that? So look at some of the things they've added here. You can go in. Here's something funny I found. If you go to my LinkedIn, you can find it right now. I found the recommendation letter from 1992 that my managing editor wrote for me to get into the J School, right? And I found it and I posted it in part as a tribute to him. Like, he was my mentor and he changed my life. I got in the J School because of that, right? Back then there was, I think you only needed one recommendation letter. It was very funny. So that's how I was able to fool the admissions office and get in here. And then you've seen they've added these logos and you can add positions, and we'll talk about recommendations in a second. So what have they changed that you need to know about? They have added this thing here. Does everybody see? Add, upload file, and add link. Does everybody see that? Very important. That's on the right side here like this, right? This thing here. Very important, because what does that suddenly become? It becomes an archive of your work, right? It becomes where your links are, the clip file you have, the videos you did. Stick all your Vimeo videos in there, or your YouTube channel. Think about all of those things on there, right? That's just happened. So please go in there and do that. And then the other things that they've done is they've added here. So under education, we've got to, I haven't worked on this, but you should do a better job. Go in here and put in the names of the courses you took. You took a great class, and put in the name of the professor. It's a nice thing because you're looking in a resume for triggers that will start a conversation and make you more memorable. For a long time on my little one-page resume, I had Calvin and Hobbes as one of my interest things. And I had that there for years before somebody said, oh, Calvin and Hobbes, I love Calvin and Hobbes. And we had a whole conversation around it. And then I had to kind of steer it back to, let's talk about this job you're going to offer me, right? So think about putting in things that make you memorable. And of course, now I don't want to suddenly have everybody put in Calvin and Hobbes, but think about things like that, right? Here are the schools I went to, and then the awards and all this stuff. And then there are more things. You can add personal details, advice for contacting street. Put that in there. Like, how do you want to be found? And then organizations you work with, languages you speak, what you've, and look, there's other things I've not even put in yet here, right? Who am I following? So what is happening here is they're going to decide about you based on other things than where you worked. And that's really important. That's a breakthrough idea. I've been talking about this for years, that you are more than your title, right? You are more than your job position and your title. You are a fascinating, exciting, smart, interesting person. How the heck would I know that if I have a one-page resume that says intern, right? As much in-depth, as much new and interesting things that you can add about yourself, you should. And again, I want to be very careful here. I have everybody from Career Services is here at the moment. So if I'm giving advice that's contrary or wrong, please feel free to jump in and correct the record, because I don't want them to then come to you and say, well, Sri said, right? So I do want to make that clear. But we have a question. Hi.
Yeah, would you call it a negative if your resume and your LinkedIn were, I guess, similar in wording?
Similar or dissimilar?
Similar. Should
No.
it be completely different?
No, 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 not at all. I'm sorry if I implied it. What I meant was your resume is just a sliver of you, and this is a much bigger, rounded out version of you. In fact, who has time to like create two narratives about yourself? So take the resume becomes the bare bones, and this is the flesh that you're constantly adding things to. They have a section here where you can go in and do all kinds of things. Like you go to the top, look, publications. Please never do this. Your test scores, do not do that, right? Your patents, your certifications. People are going to make judgments based on this. Now, why is another reason all of this is important? Because we constantly think this is about people. And a lot of social media is about people. But this is, you know what? This is about the machines that are going to be sifting and making the first cut at those jobs. And that's why the more stuff you have in here, because they're going to say, I only want people who have certifications on XYZ. And if you forgot, you didn't even know this existed, you won't make that first cut. Recruiters get a special version of LinkedIn. I don't know if you know this. There's a special version you get in. It's very expensive. And among other things, they don't see photographs of you, right? Because of equal employment and other concerns. Though that's not a concern always in other countries. In other countries, in India, on your resume, the following things are routinely put. Father's name, marital status, age. Right? I mean, it's all like mandatory fields. You can't get around it, because that's, when you have I don't know what it is, 1 million people named Shiv Singh, you've got to have Shiv Singh, son of Ram Singh, and there'll be like 50,000 of those. So that's how they try to get that kind of information. Questions from anybody? Okay. Let's see. So constantly improve your LinkedIn. And by the way, everything I've shown so far is is all available on the free version. A couple of other things that are new to LinkedIn that you should know about, or newish to LinkedIn, is the company section. And has anybody here spent time on that? All of you should spend time on that and think about how you can build your company's section. Your job hunting or career management is storytelling, and you're telling a story. And among the things I want to hear is, what are the things I can learn about you from the company you keep, literally, or the things you look at, right? So if I go in here, let me see the 7 companies I'm following. So I'm a recruiter, and these are the 7 companies I'm following. I'm going to add another one here. Let me just go in here, and let's see here. Let's see. Before I do that, let me just talk about this for a second. So you see, this is the story. Like, I go into an interview, right? I go into an interview at Foursquare, and I say, I'm dying to work at Foursquare. It's the most important thing in my life. And I pull up your page, and there's no reference to, like, I think you really want to work at Facebook. You see the difference? Like, these are the companies you're following. You're not following us here. Companies are going to start expecting this, that if you really care, like the other example I give is that you go to a job and you say, I want to be your food writer because I've been wanting to be a food writer my whole life. And I'll say, okay, hold on a second. I'll go onto your Twitter, and I'll notice you don't follow any chefs. You never talk about food. You know nothing about the food business, right? It's all shoes all the time. Then I'll say, here, go meet my shoe editing colleague and go talk to him about this, right? See the difference, right? People are going to not just look at your resume or hear what you're saying. They're going to go around you. They're going to try and find who you are and find out more about you by the company you keep and by the social company you keep. So let me just show you this, if I can. I'm just trying to find the, just trying to find where another one of these companies is. Okay, so look at doing that, and then go to your company's home and see what companies you're following. The great thing is this all becomes news for you. Suddenly these companies are talking about who they're hiring, who they're firing, all of that you can, well, not as much who they're firing, but who they're hiring on here. You'll see they've announced a new position, or they've hired somebody new from a company that you know. And then you start learning about these folks while you're doing that, right? So I can go in here and I go to the New York Times. I tell people become a student of the places you want to work. All of this used to be opaque. Now it's suddenly open, right? So my lifelong goal is to work at the New York Times. I'm going to go in here and look at this. All this stuff it's telling me. I'm not ready for the New York Times, but I want to know what it's doing. What are the kinds of things it's thinking about? Who have they hired recently? All of this will be posted. Who's new here, right? Here are 21 jobs. Here are 61 first-degree connections. All of that's going to be important as we go forward in this space. Questions from anybody about this? So find the companies you want. And by the way, just a suggestion, don't just follow one company. Because if you're working at a company and you follow just one, then it's like a signal, I want to go work at that. So follow 2 or 3 in that genre so that you kind of cover your tracks on there. In the early days, I'm sorry, I have a terrible toothache, and it's getting worse as I'm speaking here. In the early days of LinkedIn, I wrote my first piece about LinkedIn in 2004. And when I first wrote this piece, people would say, I can't join LinkedIn because it'll be a sign I'm leaving the company. Right? That's why I'm on there. Today, your boss is on LinkedIn. Society has changed. It's normal to be on LinkedIn, but your boss has no idea how to use LinkedIn either. So you're going to use it better than him or her. So you can go in there, look at their products, look at their insights, and you see 26,000 people are following the New York Times feed on there. Questions? Yeah, sure.
So when you're actually at a company, what do you think about following competitors? Like, for example, if you were following Harvard, would that be attractive?
Again, this is very early days. Like, my colleagues have no idea about this, probably, and they don't care about this yet. So this is early days. That's why being early to this stuff is good. But I think that you have to be careful about that, right? That you have to be aware. That's why I said follow a genre. If I was trying to get a job at Harvard, I would follow Harvard, Princeton, Yale, NYU, like all of them together so that no one can tell I'm actually trying to get a job at Harvard. I'm not trying to get a job at Harvard. And by the way, this is fascinating. The people who viewed my profile, who else they viewed? And if you look at this, the first name on there is my wife, who's at Rupa Online, if you want to tweet at her. The second person, at Perry Hewitt, is the first person I ever talked to about my job because she's the chief digital officer at Harvard. And then Melanie, who I've worked with for 21 years, Vadim Lavrusik, our student, Mitra Kalita, the godmother of my kids. Like, I don't know how this works, but how that's the list that people are looking at. And you should look at the list of people who come up when they're looking at you. That tells you something about your branding, right? And so my branding is generally around technology, around journalism. There's Ernest Sotomayor, there's John Dube, right? There are all these other people. Linda is my adjunct. Some of these other folks I don't know. And you could have fun with this, right? I could say to Michael Smith, I could drop him a note and say, hey, LinkedIn thinks we're similar, so I thought we'd say hello. Like, you have an excuse, right? Or I would take a picture of this and tweet that and say, look at who else people look at with me. You can have some fun and build a little story around this very easily if you wanted to. Questions from anybody about this? Okay. This company called DNA Info that some of you know, it now has about 75 journalists in New York and Chicago. I was in the founding team of it. And we did our entire hiring through LinkedIn. We found that LinkedIn was really good because the resumes came out in a very nice format, and it had something that no other resume came with. You had their recommendations, everything else, but what did you have on the right? People you know who know this person. So we were able to call them and ask, not the original 3, but the other people. So it's a very good way for us to kind of work, and that's how we did that. And by the way, LinkedIn also posts a lot of special exclusive jobs that are not posted elsewhere. So that's another reason you want to look at that. So like that LinkedIn jobs, they were only posted on LinkedIn. So we only hired from two places, Columbia J School and the LinkedIn jobs. I just want to spend a second on this thing. This is so ridiculous, right? You all know this, right? So what can we do about it? We could complain, or we can use it to our advantage. What is our advantage? That we can use this to build what I've been talking about all day. Remember the name checks? We can use it as kind of a little internet chit. Find somebody you admire and give them this thing. But don't overdo it, and make sure it matches what they want to be known for, right? So that you don't end up giving things that they don't want to be known for. Does that make sense to everybody? And so as much as I joke about it, this is an incredibly nice thing that hundreds of people have done for me, and I'm such an ingrate, right? I'm saying what a waste of time this is. Partly because I haven't absorbed it, and they've done this nice thing for me, and I haven't acknowledged it. I haven't written them a nice note, anything like that. Questions from anybody? So now I want to talk about recommendations, and this is the serious part of LinkedIn. Yeah?
Actually, I know by default it will broadcast every change you make, and while that's great for us now while we're job searching, should we be turning that off in the future?
Yeah, well, I'll show you another part of that. Hold on to that question, we'll talk about it, but I just want to talk about recommendations. So recommendations, I think, are badly done on LinkedIn by most people. The giving of recommendations and the getting of recommendations. What do I mean by that? The giving of recommendations are done badly because people they often give too many, and they give them to the wrong people at the wrong time. It's just coming up. And I've given, I think, about 30 recommendations. And it sounds like a lot, but I've been teaching for 21 years. And so I don't think it's that many. And I turn down recommendation requests every day, dozens of them every month. I just say, I can't give you one at the moment, right? And I've never asked to be recommended. I don't make that a part of my thing, but people give them, and I'm grateful for those. What I want to show you here are the recommendations I've given. So you go to the given section. And this is one of the things you have to manage, just like you manage everything else on social media. And I gave one yesterday, or recently, to Manolo. He's the head of audio at SoundCloud. And I said, being the head of audio at SoundCloud is like being the head of video at YouTube, right? I mean, that's like the most important job. And it's a very short, simple recommendation, and that's all it is, right? Or you can go back and see the one I've given to John Doob, who was one of the best students I've had at the school, and I happily gave him a recommendation. And he now runs CBS Fantasy Sports and runs that part of the company. He was editor-in-chief at part of AOL for a while. Anyway, so here I wrote this, and this one I took seriously. I mean, I take them all seriously, but I wrote them in fairly in-depth. And what he and others have said to me is that this has been a useful part of their profile to have that. I have other people I've given just one line to, but that line just says specifically what I knew about this person, when I worked with that person, and what they had. That's all you really need. And you should think about some strategy about getting recommendations. One of them is get the recommendation at the moment when people feel the best about you. And when the nice thing you've done, is memorable, right? Or that it's freshest in their minds. What I mean is, I find people will ask for a recommendation 4 years later, and then you have to say, do you remember 4 years ago? And they'll be like, maybe, and then but what if you did it right away? You know, this feeling that they have, they're like, thank you so much. Then you pull out your thing. You want to do it right now? You want to write the recommendation? No, I'm kidding. But think about that. So again, it doesn't have to be the minute they say thank you, but it shouldn't be 4 years later. And it's not, I got somebody very nice who asked me for a recommendation, and she did it so kind of simply, not like in a, oh, I'm going to be hunting for a job, so I need it, please help me. It was just such a nice way. Same thing with Manolo. He's not looking for a job, but I wanted to give him a recommendation. I felt like he's such a good person, more people should know him. And that's the way we want to be with these recommendations. So you want to get those as soon as you can. But be very careful with professors, because professors often aren't on LinkedIn, don't understand it. They have hundreds of people asking them for it. So be careful, but look at the others. And then please, please, please don't do what I call the back scratch recommendations, where I'll write you one and then you'll write me one and then we'll see that. In fact, in my recommendations, there are some I've not accepted, even the actual recommendations written to me, because I had just given that person one and I'll say, look, let's hold off, I'll publish it later. So you have that option on there. And always feel free to write back to them when they write your recommendation. Thank you so much. You forgot, we did that other project, and you said I did well on that, that kind of thing. Questions about recommendations from anybody? I'm spending a lot of time on it because I want you to think about that as you go out there, right? Questions? And then giving recommendations, only really give them to people you can stand by, right? On Twitter, I have a list called Sri's List, if you just go under my Twitter account, and there are only about 8, 10 people there. I'm just building that out. People I trust on a lot of things, and I would be happy to give them a recommendation for anything. So you can look that up as well. I hate it when I get those things that they've written to 200 people, right, using the system. Do not do that. Do not use the LinkedIn recommendation system to ask 100 people. It just says you didn't even bother. I mean, you're like, you want me to give you this incredible gift, and you couldn't even be bothered to at least pretend, right? Questions from anybody? Okay, so let me show you another part of this, and that's my inbox here. All of you should be thinking long and hard about this. Excuse me one second. All right, let me look here. I'm going to go to the invitation section. And all of you should feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. My rule about LinkedIn is I connect with everybody I already know, people I'd like to know, and people I should know. So I might be a little more open than most of you, because most of you are like, only people I already know. I think that's a terrible way to go through life, because that's saying that everybody who's going to be a nice person to know, I already know. So if I didn't know Anusha and she came up to me at a cocktail party, I'd be like, no, stay away, I don't know you, I can't talk to you, we're never going to do any business together, right? Instead, I'm more open. Now, that may not work for you, and that's fine, but have like a plan. Like, what is your plan? So I always tell people, do a recent photograph, close-up picture of you, because people may not recognize you afterwards, right? So definitely go in there. And then spend a minute writing out the description of how you know somebody. Right? Look at Anders, where it says, I was in your seminar on social media, great points and useful tips, all the best, Anders. And so I'm going to hit accept. Does everybody see that? I'm going to hit accept on Srila as well. But always think about this, right? And I beg you to please edit the thing that says, I'd like to add you to my professional network. Or have you ever seen this other one that says, because I trust you, I'd like to add you. Like, oh, really? Thank you so much. I was worried you didn't trust me. Ridiculous stuff like that, right? I also don't like the one that's now very popular. Have you seen it? Good to find you on LinkedIn, Sri. And I'm like, I was there before you were born, right? Like, don't say good to find you. Like, don't use the default settings of this stuff is the message I'm trying to. Take this 2 seconds to edit it. Right? And that's how I would try to do that. And so I'm going to go in here and look at others as well. Questions from anybody? All of you should connect with me, and if you'll just say, jobs talk, that's good enough, and I'll accept you. And then you'll be part of that network so that you can connect and connect with other people. Questions from anybody? So here, so in the last day, 19 people have viewed my profile, and 68 times my profile has come up in searches. That doesn't mean they searched my name. They searched something, Chief Digital Officer, and came up, or something like that. And you can go in here and you can see all kinds of statistics about this. So when you go in, you can see how many times your name appeared in a search, and then how many times you were viewed, and things like that. But also ridiculous things show up as well. Look at the number one thing I'm searched for is cop. I don't know what that means, right? Or when people search for Sri, I show up. But some other ridiculous things happen as well. I'll just show you. Saja is okay. Suva, because Suva is the capital of Fiji, where I went to high school. And then for Christian Amanpour, I show up. How disappointed are the people searching for Christian Amanpour that I show up? I presume it's because she doesn't have a LinkedIn account. I show up instead. That'd be really bad, right? And poor people looking for Juan M. They find me. I don't know why. And then you can see some of the others. Questions from anybody about this? Okay, so now here's the thing that somebody was asking earlier. It broadcasts what I'm doing. So is Margaret here? Margaret, there you are. So I can tell you were searching my account. There's Shivani, I can tell she was searching. That's all okay. Srila was. Betsy West, she's sitting right here. The Professor Betsy West is right here. But that's okay. But you might want to disguise what you're doing, especially if you're doing an investigative report or something. You can adjust what you show up and you can turn it on and off. So you can go in here under settings and you can turn this on and off. Oops, sorry. So they always double check this to make sure you're really you. Oops, one more time. So here's the things they do. You can go under your settings, manage your Twitter. No, turn off your activity broadcast. That's what you asked about, right? So you go in there and you click on this and it says, let companies view or don't let them view. You can adjust that kind of stuff and adjust who you are, what people see. Select what others see when you viewed their profile. Look at that. Can everyone see why that's useful? Yes? Okay, let's keep going here. So here are some things you can do today. Build that board of advisors. What I mean by that are you have a mentor or two, but build a board of advisors. That's more than just a mentor. It's a list of people who you ask for advice on a regular basis. But connect with them when you don't need them. I'll tell you about this person who I wrote a recommendation for, and I never hear from this person except every 2 or 3 years when it's time for the next recommendation. She needs a new job, she asks. And then finally, after like the 3rd time, I just said to her, you know, it's okay, I'll give because you're such a good student, but this is not human relationships, right? You never ask like, you know, how are you doing? Or even an update on, hey, I got the job, I'm a year in, I'm really happy, but in a couple of years, I think I'll be back asking you for a recommendation. What is common sense in real life is common sense in social media. Many of you should be thinking that. Think long term. Think strategically about career choices. Start retooling. And wait, I just finished graduating. What are you talking about? You should be retooling even now. Be open to new ideas. Resume and LinkedIn makeovers. And we'll talk about some of these things. Become a clear communicator and kind of change your media diet. So I mean by that is to be reading a lot about how the world is changing. And Mashable is a great way to think about that. Or paid content, CJR, Pointer, Lifehacker, all of these things give you a sense of all the changes happening. And the good news is you don't have to read all this stuff by going to these websites. What can you do? You can get them as an RSS feed, but who's got the time for that? What do you do instead? A free once-a-day email from all of these things, right? And that's what you should sign up for. Be a clear personal communicator. Give people a reason not to ignore you. Does that make sense to everybody? Crystal clear email subject lines are really important in what you're doing. So please look at that. Your signature file should have your portfolio, your cell phone, your LinkedIn, and your Twitter handle. You'd be surprised, and I'm now on the other side. I get a lot of reporter calls. There's no phone number anywhere. And I'm in rush. I don't want to write a long answer. I may not even want a paper trail or a digital trail that I emailed you back. I just want to pick up the phone, give you the answer, and go. But people don't do that. Use the communication platform that the person you are contacting is most comfortable in. This is shocking to me that it happens to this day, that people will ask questions inside the Facebook messaging system, which is an awful messaging system. Why? So if Anusha writes to me and says, Sri, do you know anybody at Rolling Stone? It's stuck in there, right? Because you can't reply easily. I can't forward that to my friend at Rolling Stone. I can't reply, CC my friend at Rolling Stone. I can't save it into a folder called Rolling Stone. Like, I can't do any of those things because she wasn't using email. Email is still the best way to communicate. All these other things are resources and tools that help amplify and connect you with the people you need to connect with. Questions from anybody? Look at this. I'll give you a second here. is wrong with this, the first part of the message? What is wrong with it? It's a terrible way to write to somebody, right? Hi, Sri. I was just wondering what the best place to send pictures for the Huffington Post is. I've sent a couple of emails to them trying to find out, but I've had no luck. Thanks, and a very common name. No last name, no anything. What else is missing from this letter? What else is missing? Well, yeah, I mean, the signature file, right, with all of that. But what else is missing? How about hello, how are you? Like, what's going on? You know, in journalism, this is like one of the biggest gifts somebody can give you is what? Their contacts, right? Right? And to write this, I was so upset. So anyway, I showed this slide at a session, and look what happened. During the talk, Craig Kennelly, who was there, said, hey, next time someone asks you, I'm the guy you get to. So I'm helping all of you tweet at Craig right now. You don't need him, but Craig is one of the smartest young people on social media. Tweet at him right now and say, Sri's talking about you. Or take that picture and send him that slide and tell him I'm doing that, right? But everybody see the mistake, right? Being presumptuous. There's not even there's a thanks, but not a thank you. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit. But no wonder nobody replied to her. She didn't have a signature file. It's like you don't know who's writing to you, right? But look at this email, and I really want you to study this email. What's so amazing about this? Why am I showing this to you? Huh? Anybody know? Because that's a job that pays $150,000. And look how she wrote this. You know what I would have done? I'm like, yo, this is a $150,000 job. If you know anybody, good. Go to hell, right? That's how I would have written this job. Like, look how hyper polite, right? You don't need to be this polite, but what a great thing for this person to do. And this is like, mama would be proud, right? That's what you should be thinking about. Any questions? And yes, that job got filled very fast. It was at a foundation. Participate, right? I post a lot of jobs on my Sri Tips, not on the on my regular profile page that you saw. Let me see if anybody's writing anything here. Anybody writing anything? Let's see. Yeah, several people are posting things, so that's great. Thank you for all these tips. That's good. It becomes a live place where more people can see your stuff. But I have a separate thing called Sri Tips that you can look at from this page, and there you'll find the jobs I post. But anyway, coming back to this, I just wanted to let you know I'm going to formally apply for the senior writer position. Thank you for posting it on Facebook. Just a nice human interaction. Numbers, learn about numbers and how things work. I tell people, become a student of your own social media. Study it, like why is something getting 0 clicks, something's getting 15 clicks. What is the difference? What happened? Study those. Some quick social media stuff, many of you have taken my class, so you know this. Try to have a link or an @ mention or photo in every tweet you write. Tweet at 120 characters or less so that others can retweet you. Tweet no more than once an hour unless you're tweeting like from a session like this. And try Hootsuite and other tools. TweetDeck is a great tool also. And grow your followers organically, one or few at a time. Don't worry about how many followers you have, right? When we teach our entrepreneurship class, I tell people, like you're starting a blog, do it for no money with great enthusiasm and you'll be successful. Because otherwise, if you can't do that, you'll never be successful for all the money in the world, right? So that enthusiasm has to be the reason you do it. So do the social media not to have followers, but because you believe this is a good way to communicate. If you don't believe it, don't waste your time. Profile photos matter. We talked about that. The shortest possible recognizable Twitter handle that you can get. Put your full name in the bio section and constantly edit that. Use bit.ly links when you can. If you look at my Twitter bio, you'll see I have 2 links in there that to my, if you go in here, so I have a link to this May 16th workshop that we're doing. It's called Social Media One Night Stand. And it's a one-night class followed by 2 weeks of online coaching. So if you know anybody who wants that, please tell them to go. They can just go to my bio page and take it there, and a link here. You can put 2 links into that. And by the way, I did a version of this in Seattle, and I wrote an article about that. And you can watch the entire 3.5 hours of Seattle if you want. And this is an example of where I give away the video free of the last session, but still 100 people are going to sign up and come to it because it'll be different. And so don't worry about like locking everything in, right? The other thing that I will show you here on this is, again, keep editing your bio as much as you, I mean, every week, every other week, think about what is on there. Triangulate, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to show you this, triangulate.com, if you haven't seen it. Go in there and play with that, and you'll find it's a good tool. I also love Twitter for busy people, which shows you a new way of looking at Twitter through people's profile photos. And that's why profile photos matter. And there's where you can find more links and more ideas at bit.ly/3soc. Here's some social media stuff you need to know, that people will unfollow you. And it's not the end of the world when they do. Don't obsess about it. I use this service that gives me a list of everybody who unfollows you. It's a terrible thing. You have to have a strong constitution for it. It'd be imagine if Brian Williams, like every time somebody changed the channel, he got like an email. Jane, just change the channel because you were so boring. Like, it'd be terrible, right? So don't get this list because it'll upset you. And yes, Katy Perry stopped following me, but it's Katy E. Perry, not the other Katy Perry. Anyway, so you can see that. This I tell people to do. This is what I'm calling that name check. This is somebody from, you can tweet at her, Mona's Apple. And this is when my Twitter handle used to be Srinet. Remember, try to get the shortest possible recognizable one. She just, this nice thing she did for me, right? She didn't need to do that, but she did that because she wanted to be helpful. And think about that. Or here is Patricia Kitchen, who was my student and now is my adjunct. And she just did a class and tweeted that. And then she went into Facebook and did another thank you. Like, think about, like, one of the things, one of my friends is a leading donor, a leading philanthropy coach in America, one of the leading philanthropy coaches in America. And she says, you thank your donors 7 times a year. 7 times. It was news to me because at Saja, until Anusha and others came along, we didn't always thank our donors. But 7 times. So I say, if that's what you do as a philanthropy, imagine somebody who's your mentor, how many times do you thank them? And in fact, we almost never thank them. We only harass them for the next recommendation, right? Throughout the year, think back to the year that you just had. How many times did you write to your mentors or the person who wrote your recommendation letter? Thank you. I just had the greatest day of my life. I met so-and-so. I went to this place. I did an incredible story. Or I went to the job fair. How many of us do it, including me? We don't do it enough, is what I'm saying. So then I wrote this back to her. Think about that. Your personal brand, I want you to think about that. Branding will happen even if you don't seek it out. Do people return your emails? Like, that's one of the tests of your brand. And you can enhance your brand by sharing what you read, by being a successful pointer. You don't have to have original, brilliant thoughts every time. You can point to other people. Again, by going to bit.ly/3jobs, you get all these links, and you can check out how to own your own online brand and your personal branding blog, and these great instant branding tools from Jeremy. You can use that. There's a branding exercise that we don't have time for that you can do on your own. People who have taken my course say that's the best thing they got out of the course was this actual exercise. And again, you can get that here. Ways to establish credibility and authority. Be a great pointer on Twitter and Facebook. Extend your content by curating, sharing, pointing via other sites. YouTube. How many of you have your own YouTube channel? A couple of you, right? Think about building one. You know the amazing thing? You don't have to have your own content on it. You don't have to create a single video. You can create playlists for other people that then others will tweet at and share. My kids and I learned that when Nelson Mandela was in the hospital. We created a Thinking of Nelson playlist of music about South Africa. And we had people from around the world sharing things with us, and we made this thing. And it was a lot of fun, and we have that now. And so think about doing that. You can find my YouTube videos at youtube.com/3net. And the second video I ever did of this gentleman sitting right in front, Howard Weinberg, in a subway, right? In the subway we did that. Good, we're almost at the end because we're almost out of juice on the thing here. All of you should be on Muckrack. Do you all know Muckrack? Check it out, muckrack.com. Very important place for journalists, reporters, editors, etc. Blog Talk Radio. If you have any interest in like a topic or a subject area, I tell people from having listened to this idea from others that the future of journalism is specialized and digitized. So one of the things you could do is use Blog Talk Radio as one of these tools to build an audio platform where you have a weekly radio show about whatever it is you're doing. You're working on a book, you build a radio show, weekly thing to talk about. It's half hour free on Blog Talk Radio. I have done for the J School and for Saja 200 shows. We've had 2 million listens on that, right? And it's a free service. We have the paid version, but it's such a great way and something that people don't think about. So tell people, use me, use my networks, practice on me, right? Connect with me, share things, see what I'm talking about, and post whenever you can. It's just a good way to kind of see what is going on out there and how you can learn from this stuff. So I want to take a couple of questions, and then I want to do Facebook because Facebook has changed so much. So let's do a couple of questions from anybody. No questions? Anusha, go ahead.
As journalists, would you recommend we have different strategies on Facebook and Twitter in terms of personal and professional life, or you think it's all the same, doesn't matter?
No, I wish that you could have that Facebook, like several people said to me, Facebook is personal, Twitter is public. There's no such thing. It's very hard. And what I recommend that you kind of think about here, again, I really am sorry about this, but so what I tell people is that you can have your own like section of Facebook and you can, your own business page on Facebook, but what are you going to do when a source who's really important to you asks to be your friend? What are you going to do when your boss wants to be your friend? What are you going to do when your mother-in-law wants to be your friend, right? These are all things that we now have to think about. And it's very hard. I had a friend who would only do business on LinkedIn. But he was an editor, his best writers friended him. And it all got mushed together. And so that's what he did. So this is something that you have to think about. You have to have your own kind of personal strategy for this. And what I have done here is, one of the things you can do is allow people to follow you on Facebook, right? You all know about this? And so even if we can't be friends, you can follow me on Facebook, and all my public stuff you can see very easily. Right? And you should know just that I hope this can be a continuing conversation. Every tweet I write, every public Facebook post I do is a continuation of this conversation. Like I think about it before I post it, thinking it might be something new that can help you in your work. And that's how I kind of think this through. But you have to decide how public a persona do you want, right? Like most of you are never going to do this on your timeline, which I have done here. Let's see if it'll work. But you have to kind of think about it. And there's me and my mom, right, in Japan. And I'm going to now for Mother's Day, be able to use that so easily. I was able to pull that up, right? So you have to decide what your story is. I have a friend who's just gotten divorced. So you know what he's doing? He's curating his timeline because he says, this is my way of telling my side of my story. And when you go on dates now, like some of you are old enough to remember Sleepless in Seattle, and it was like when Tom Hanks is like, I'm going to be out there, and Rob Reiner says to him, I know you've not dated in a long time, but there's this, one of the new things you need to know about is tiramisu. And he said, what is that? Some woman's going to ask me to do it to her, and I don't know what it is, right? That's sort of how my friend is with Facebook. He's like, oh my God, when I was dating, there was no such thing as Facebook. And now, so he's trying to figure it out, how this stuff works. So the key is to decide what you want to share, when you want to share it. And people are going to look at this stuff. See, when they go up here, they will click on timeline, and they'll click on highlights. And then they'll be able to see what you have determined as the highlights of your year, your day, etc. Couple of thoughts. Here's one big thing that's happening on Facebook. All pictures that are like this now on Facebook are becoming this on Facebook. What is the implication of that? One, we've got to have better photographs that we're posting. That's why I tell you, practice with your cameras and your iPhones and all of that. Second thing that's going to happen is it's going to change the internet. Because people are used to pictures this big, they're going to expect pictures this big everywhere. So all web page designs are going to change very slowly, but it will happen. So think about having nice big pictures. Oops, sorry. And then the other thing that's happening is graph search. Have you all seen this? If you haven't seen it, be very, very scared. If you're a journalist, it's the most awesome thing. If you're a marketer, it's the most awesome thing. If you're a human being, it's the most awful thing, right? If you've seen it. Because what it is I can go in here, this has to reboot, or no, it's actually coming up. Do you want to see if the capture is still happening? What happens is that I can go in here and tell you within 10 seconds, all of my friends who went to NYU and live in Brooklyn. 10 seconds. All my friends who went to NYU are single and live in Brooklyn. All my friends who went to NYU are single and like ice cream and live in Brooklyn. 10, 15 seconds max. Now that's interesting / scary. If you're a journalist, it's great because you can pull out all these ideas for stories and you're looking for somebody. But if you're a human being, it's really scary. But here's the really scary part, is not even any of that. The really scary part, but I can tell you, people who are not my friends, who are single and male and live in Brooklyn and like ice cream. That's the new part of Facebook. And that's what's coming. And it's here already. You have to get on the wait list for that. And how you can do that is by going onto, oh, I should have just used your mouse. You can, if you, let me see if I can show it to you. I have an article I wrote that has a link so you can get on the wait list for both the visual design and graph search. It'll come out, but it takes a while to get to 2 billion people, 1 billion people. If it's not working, it's okay. Don't worry about it. The last set of steps can be just this. Questions from people. Let's go with a couple of questions on Facebook. Right? I urge everybody to join a Facebook group called, a Facebook page called Facebook Plus Journalists, where Vadim Lavrusik, who was our student, the first journalist hired at Facebook, posts all these great tips. He wrote a thing the other day, 15 things media companies can do, something like that. 15 things media companies can do to improve their networking on, or whatever, engagement on Facebook, things like that. He posts on a regular basis. Some other great people to look at and study on social media. My adjuncts, at Travelogged with 2 G's. She's an alum of the school. Her name is Liz Barad Wright. My other adjunct is Linda Bernstein. So this is, Liz is at Travelogged, 2 G's, right? Travelogged, at Travelogged. And then the other person I was saying is Wordwhacker, and think about following them as well. And you can kind of see how they've built their brand, what they're doing on there, and you can just go like this and see. So you can have your name, but it's single. See, I forget all the time. It's single L, double G. Always double check these things, right? Single L, double G. Travelogue to follow Liz. She was a student at the J School. Questions from anybody about this? But otherwise, we're basically done. I'll stick around for a few minutes, writhing in pain if you have a question. Otherwise, I want to thank the folks at Courier Services, and I want to thank Teresa for setting all of this up and recording 2 cameras. I noticed nobody stood up to help her, but that's life. It's hard. People don't always step up to help, but that's the story of life, right? I want to thank you, and I want to leave you with a final thought, which was shared with me by a very senior journalist who said that the scarcest resource of the 21st century is human attention. And the businesses, companies, brands that know how to get a sliver of attention, they stay in business. And what we need to do is to think about how do we get that sliver. And that takes me to another thought on this, is that we can very easily build our brands and think about building our brands, but at the core, it's what you do well, right? So even despite all this digital stuff, Dean Sotomayor used to always say, the number one thing when people call, they ask, are you a good reporter? That's what they ask us for. Not, are you a great Twitterer? They ask, are you a great reporter? But there's a person at Twitter named Erica Anderson, who has a great Twitter handle. think I've too many A's in there. Somebody double check, is she two E's? Can you just check who has a computer? Is she two A's together or what? Erica has this great line. She says, if you're good in real life, you can be great on Twitter. Two A's? Two A's. Okay, so she's Erica America. So what she says, if you're good in real life, you can be great on Twitter. I take it a step further. I say if you're great in real life, you can be awesome on Twitter. But if you're bad in real life, you'll be awful on Twitter. There's nothing we can do to fix you. So at the core of it, it's everything you've learned at Columbia. How to be a great journalist, how to be a great storyteller, and then you take this and you add it to the things you're doing. Who's overwhelmed and exhausted? Everybody, right? Thanks very much. Good luck, everybody.